The train station was shaking with announcements no one could hear clearly. Liam stood near platform 6, trying to read the staff's lips as panic spread through the crowd. He tapped gently to ask for help, but the man in uniform waved him off. A stranger nearby muttered, "If you can't hear, don't travel at rush hour." People turned away, pretending not to notice. The schedule board flickered, making everything worse. Liam felt that familiar burn in his chest. Being deaf wasn't the problem. Being dismissed was. Then a woman stepped out of the line. She held up her tablet and typed quickly, asking where he needed to go. Her calmness cut through the chaos. Liam thanked her with a small sign. She smiled and lifted her tablet again. That's when he saw the logo on the back. Audient Robotics. The same institute whose failed experiment had taken his brother from him. Years before that crowded platform, Liam had watched his brother disappear behind the doors of an experimental theater that smelled like antiseptic and fear. Evan had squeezed his hand once, hard, trying to joke with his eyes. "If this works, it'll hear you roll yours when Mom nags us." Then the doors swung shut, and all Liam had left was his own heartbeat and the blinking light above the word "restricted." Hours later, the doctors came out with words that moved too fast for him to read. His mother's face collapsed first, then her legs. Someone finally wrote it down for him on a clipboard. Complication. Coma. No clear prognosis. Audient called it an unfortunate anomaly. Their lawyers called it acceptable risk. The press releases called it a bold step toward a more connected world. In the tiny kitchen of their apartment, Liam called it something else, signing the word over and over until his hands shook. Betrayal. He dropped out of art school to work nights at a cafe near the hospital because the machines there hummed louder than his thoughts. The manager liked that he didn't make small talk. Customers liked that he smiled even when they didn't look up. Sometimes, on his break, he would stand outside the ICU window and sketch Evan's sleeping face from memory, adding sound waves around his head, little lines that never quite reached his ears. Years blurred. Court dates where judges barely glanced at him. Settlement offers that felt like hush money. Emails from Audient with too many disclaimers and not enough apology. Being deaf wasn't what isolated him. What shut him out were locked doors, unread documents, and people who spoke into microphones but never looked into his eyes. The night after the train station incident, he was wiping down tables when the door chime flashed. Maya stepped in. Rain on her coat, the same logo on her satchel. She scanned the room, then raised a hand in a small, careful greeting. The kind you give someone you know has learned to flinch. She pointed to herself, mouthed slowly, "Maya," then wrote on a napkin, "We need to talk. About Audient. About Evan." He almost dropped the cloth. They sat in the corner booth, under a flickering light. She turned her tablet toward him. Not with marketing slides, but with something that looked almost like confession. Internal memos, halted trials, complaints from staff about safety protocols. Her fingers hovered over the glass, shaking once before she continued typing. "I tried to stop the old Neuralink trial," she wrote. "I didn't have the power." Liam stared at the words until they blurred into each other. Then he stared at her. She had the kind of tired around her eyes that didn't come from bad sleep, but from long-term guilt. He typed back, his hands colder than the metal edge of the table. "My brother is in a bed he can't wake up from because of your old trial. You want me to help fix your conscience?" Maya, read it, inhaled slowly, and instead of defending herself, she wrote only 3 words. "I deserve that." Then another line. Slower. "But your brother deserves more than my shame. He deserves truth. Other families deserve safety. You know what was taken from you. Help me make sure no one can hide it again." At home that night, Liam sat by Evan's bedside with the offer in his pocket, the hospital monitor painting soft green light across their faces. He signed into his brother's still hand as if the skin itself could listen. If I go back to them, it's not for them. It's for you. For everyone they're still experimenting on without really looking. The next morning, he walked through the glass doors of Audient Robotics with a visitor badge clipped to his shirt and a storm head been holding for years, finally finding direction. The headquarters looked exactly like the future, pretending to be harmless. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white surfaces, plants arranged in mathematically precise patterns. Screens looped videos of smiling users tapping sleek devices behind their ears. Captions promised, bridging the silent gap. Liam almost laughed. The gap had never been silence. The gap had been indifference. Maya met him in the lobby and signed slowly, a little clumsy but earnest. "Welcome back. This time, you're not outside the door." She gave him a badge that didn't say subject or visitor. It said advisor. That word sat heavy around his neck. He followed her through glass corridors into the new lab. Instead of cold metal chairs, there were soft, adjustable seats. Instead of restraining straps, there were tactile cushions and color-coded indicators anyone could understand at a glance. On one wall, a massive display showed waveforms of tactile feedback responses, patterns of light and vibration that could stand in for sound. "Everything we build now," Maya said, letting him watch her lips and signing the key points, "has to pass what we call the second listening test. If the people most affected aren't in the room, the design doesn't move forward." He lifted his hands. "You didn't have that test when you put my brother in a chair he never got up from." She nodded, pain flickering across her face. "We didn't have a lot of things we should have had." For a while, Liam just watched. He watched engineers run simulations and stopped to ask each other, "Would this be terrifying if you couldn't hear the alarms?" He watched designers argue over interface colors because some patients wake up confused. They need calm, not clinical. He watched Maya stop a meeting mid-slide when someone referred to future users as subjects, gently but firmly replacing the word with partners. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. But it was different. And different, he realized, was a start. The real crash came when he met Dr. Cullen. Cullen walked into the lab like someone who believed walls existed to reflect his importance back at him. Perfect suit, perfect smile, eyes that never quite reached the person they were supposedly looking at. He extended a hand toward Liam, then seemed to remember and half turned it into an awkward wave, as if deafness were contagious through touch. "So, this is our community liaison," Cullen said, speaking toward Maya more than toward Liam. "Optically, this is excellent. Very forward-thinking, Maya." Liam didn't need to hear the tone to feel the condescension. Some words are loud even in silence. Maya's jaw tightened. "Has not here for optics," she said. "Has here because he sees what we don't. Because we owe his family more than a carefully worded statement." Cullen's smile thinned. "We owe his family exactly what the legal settlement required," he replied. "And we've fulfilled that. Let's keep our eyes on the future, not on unfortunate history." That night, Liam lay awake in his small apartment, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. Unfortunate history. That's what they called the day everything broke. For him, it wasn't history at all. It was right now, every time he visited the hospital. Every time his mother traced Evan's cheek as if memorizing it before it faded. He started staying late at the lab. At first, he told himself it was to make sure the new devices were truly safer. He tested everything they would let him near. Head, sit in the chair, eyes closed, and feel the patterns of vibration along his skin. The way the lights pulsed in sync. Head sign feedback, while an interpreter scribbled notes. He caught small things that would have turned into big fears for future patients. A flashing indicator too easily mistaken for pain. A protocol that assumed the user could still hear emergency instructions. But as the nights grew longer, his focus shifted. When most of the staff had gone home and the building moved into that strange mechanical quiet, he would wander the upper floors, eyes catching on door labels. Archives, legacy data, trial records. Some doors opened with his badge, others flashed red and stayed shut. One evening, he found an older technician in the break room, hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. The man watched Liam sign goodnight and responded in slow, clumsy gestures, surprising him. "You worked here?" "Back then?" Liam signed, adding the date of Evan's trial in the air. The man hesitated, then nodded once. His eyes had the same kind of cautious sorrow Liam had seen in nurses, who didn't agree with orders but followed them anyway. He took out a scrap of paper, wrote a single storage room number, and underlined it. Then he tapped his own chest twice, meaning, "I shouldn't, but I can't carry this alone anymore." The storage room was colder than the rest of the building, lined with shelves of carefully labeled boxes and drives. Liam's badge didn't open it, but the paper included a 4-digit code. The lock clicked open with a sound that felt louder than any siren. Inside, he ran his fingers over the spines of binders and the edges of drive cases, reading labels with dates that made his heart race. Then he saw it. A small black USB drive, taped to the back of a folder, marked only with a red dot. No label, no index entry. He slipped it into his pocket with a care that bordered on reverence. Maya found him an hour later in an empty conference room, staring at a blank screen. The USB lying on the table like a confession. She looked from his face to the drive and seemed to understand. "Do you want to watch it alone?" she asked, signing the last word to be sure. He shook his head. His hands were trembling. "You should see what you built, too." They plugged the drive into her laptop. The file that popped up had a date he recognized instantly. Evan's trial. The video quality was harsh, unfriendly. Overhead lights, white walls, a young Evan sitting in the chair with wires like roots tangling around his head. In the corner of the frame, timestamp and trial ID, and below that, a notification window briefly appearing. Warning. Anomaly in neural response data. Someone dragged the warning aside and kept going. Liam watched his brother laugh nervously, joke with the tech about looking like a sci-fi villain. He watched a young doctor, Cullen, step into view, brush off the tech's comment about irregular readings, and say something Liam didn't need to hear to understand. Proceed. As the procedure intensified, the monitors in the video lit up with alarm colors. A nurse stepped forward, pointing at the screen, speaking urgently. Cullen waved her off, tapped a key. The sound cut out in the recording, but the images were enough. Evan's body tensing, the nurse reaching, someone restraining her arm, Cullen staring at the data. Not the person. Then Evan slumped. The room exploded into motion too late. Liam didn't realize he was on his knees until he felt the carpet under his hands. His chest hurt like the first time Head tried to scream, and remembered halfway through that his own voice couldn't reach his ears. Maya knelt beside him, her face ashen, her hands useless at first, then slowly forming words in the air. "I didn't know. They said the warnings were false positives. They said the logs were corrupted." He looked up at her, eyes raw. "They lied to you. They lied to us. They lied to everyone." The next days blurred into a different kind of fight. Maya went to the board with the video. They told her releasing it would damage investor confidence. Cullen argued the footage was unaligned with current protocols and would confuse the public. He called the drive unauthorized data, as if the problem were the evidence, not what it showed. Liam sat outside the glass meeting room, watching silent mouths move around a table that had probably never seen this much truth placed on it at once. Maya walked out with shoulders heavier than when she went in. "They want to bury it," she said. "No need for interpretation. They've scheduled a shareholder meeting for next month to announce the new line. They're betting on the future to erase the past." Liam typed one short sentence on her tablet and turned it so she couldn't miss it. Then we bring the past to the stage. They contacted a lawyer from a disability rights organization who had been following Audient for years. He listened, watched the video, and didn't bother to hide how sick it made him. "You're not just talking about malpractice," he said. "You're talking about fraud, about evidence being suppressed. The FBI has an entire division for this. If you're willing to stand in the light, we can make sure they're standing beside you." In the weeks that followed, the building that had once felt like an enemy fortress became something stranger. A battlefield where some of the soldiers were still deciding which side they were on. Some staff members avoided Liam's gaze. Others slipped him notes of support. Tiny folded squares with words like, "I'm sorry," and "tell them what happened." The day of the shareholder meeting, the lobby was filled with suits and camera crews. Banners hung from the atrium ceiling, proclaiming, "Neuralink, next. Hearing the future." Irony had never looked so polished. Liam stood backstage with Maya, his fingers restless, tapping against his leg in old rhythms. Beyond the curtain, the murmur of the crowd felt like distant thunder. The FBI agents had arrived hours earlier, plainclothes, blending in with the techies and executives. They had copies of the video, of the warning messages, of the doctored reports. All that was left was timing. "Last chance to run," Maya signed, her attempt at humor landing somewhere between a grimace and a smile. He shook his head. "I've been running from this place since the night they took my brother away in a gurney. I'm tired." Cullen took the stage first, bathed in the soft glow of carefully plotted spotlights. He launched into a speech about innovation, about courage, about our unwavering commitment to those living in silence. Screens behind him showed curated footage, elderly patients smiling, children laughing with sleek devices behind their ears. Captions scrolled along the bottom. "Every voice deserves to be heard." In the control booth, an engineer who had watched the USB footage 3 times and barely slept since sat with 2 FBI agents. At Maya's signal, a hand pressed flat over her heart. Then extended outward, he switched the input. The stage lights didn't change, the sound system didn't falter, but the images behind Cullen did. "Hello. I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together." "Hello. I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together." Regulators opened investigations with titles too long and technical to fit in a headline. But beneath the noise of scandal, something else began to shift. Under intense scrutiny, Audient overhauled their trial protocols from the ground up. They invited independent ethicists and representatives from the deaf and disabled communities into every project room. "Nothing about us without us" stopped being a slogan on a poster and started being the first line in every design document. Consent forms were rewritten in plain language and sign language video versions. Emergency override systems were redesigned with input from people who knew exactly what terror felt like in a chair. Maya took temporary leave from her position to testify, to apologize in public instead of behind closed doors, to sit in rooms with families like Liam's and listen without defending herself. "Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together." At the first sign of distress, alarms would trigger protocols that could not be overridden by a single person, no matter their title. Liam pressed his palm to the glass, not in fear this time, but in witness. Years would pass before Evan's case reached a settlement that felt less like hush money and more like an acknowledgement of harm. He never fully woke in the dramatic way movies like to show, gasping and calling out names, but there were flickers. A squeezed hand when his favorite song played through vibrations on the bed frame, thrummed across his skin. A tear sliding from the corner of his closed eye when Liam signed stories into his palm. In the meantime, Liam built something else out of the rubble. The cafe, near the hospital, the one where he had once wiped tables to survive, changed hands after the scandal. With part of the settlement money and a quiet grant from a foundation that preferred anonymity, Liam bought it and redesigned it from the floor up. The new menu had printed text, braille, and QR codes linking to videos in sign language. Order numbers were displayed on softly glowing panels instead of shouted. One wall was painted with a mural of hands, signing different words for listen in multiple sign languages. Another corner hosted a small shelf of tablets where people could type if they struggled to speak. Every Saturday, a group gathered there, students with hearing aids and cochlear implants, elders who preferred silence to the chaos of poorly tuned devices, parents learning to sign for their kids. Sometimes Maya sat among them, her fingers still a little stiff but more fluid than when she first signed welcome back in the Audient lobby. In the late afternoons, after the rush, Liam would take his sketchbook to the corner table. Outside, buses sighed, cars honked, people shouted into phones. Inside, the cafe hummed with a different kind of sound. The rustle of pages, the click of cups, the soft slap of hands signing excitement, frustration, jokes that needed no voice to land. If this were a movie, the camera would pull back through the cafe window, catching the reflection of the city lights dancing over the mural of signing hands. It would linger on Liam at the table, on Maya laughing at a child's dramatic story told entirely in big, sweeping gestures, on a nurse from the ICU picking up a few new signs between shifts. The music would swell, not a triumphant fanfare, but a warm, steady chord, the kind you feel more than hear. But this wasn't a movie. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. Children at the cafe tugged at her sleeve, eager to show her new signs they'd learned. She answered every one, slowly but with real devotion. Audient Robotics was no longer the gleaming tower that looked untouchable from the outside. It was humbler now, with glass walls that finally meant transparency instead of branding. Their projects were overseen by committees filled with people who understood what it meant to live in silence or in fear. The acknowledgments panel on their website listed not just engineers but families, Liam's among them. Sometimes, late in the evening, Liam would close the cafe early and walk to the hospital. He'd sit beside Evan, the room dim except for the glow of the monitor casting soft green across their faces. He would sign stories into Evan's palm. Stories of small victories, stubborn days, unexpected kindnesses. Whether Evan understood or not didn't matter. The telling kept something alive in both of them. Life did not return to perfection, because perfection was never the point. What returned was gentleness, inch by inch, like spring coming back to a city that once forgot how to bloom. People walked into the cafe carrying burdens and walked out with a little more space to breathe. Some came for coffee. Most came for belonging. One evening, as the sun lowered itself behind the buildings, painting the windows gold, Maya sat across from Liam with her hands wrapped around a warm mug. Outside, the street hummed with muted life cars whispering by, distant laughter fading into the air. She signed a simple sentence across the table. You helped the world listen differently. Liam shook his head and tapped his chest gently. No, he signed. We helped each other. The light softened, as if agreeing. If this were a movie, the camera would pull back now, catching the two of them framed by the window, the mural behind them glowing like a quiet promise. But this wasn't a movie. It was a life rebuilt piece by fragile piece proof that even after the loudest kind of loss, healing can find its way back in silence.
If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to support the channel so we can create more videos. Thank you, everyone.